So I'm going to talk today about ShutOut and our New Zealand market support study that we did with this product, which we were really lucky to work with RVC on this. So look, I know it's like, well, not even 9 o'clock in the morning, and teat sealants aren't the most exciting topic. I'm 100% aware of that. But the way I framed this up when I talk about it, and I've had a lot to do with this over the last couple of years, is that what is exciting about it is that we've now got another product in New Zealand with New Zealand data to show that it's really effective in New Zealand cows and New Zealand pastoral conditions. So what that does is it gives you guys as vets and the farmers another option to use a sealant in a cow, knowing that it's going to work, because we all know that when sealants go bad, it goes bad, right? So I know there can be a lot of windiness about how we choose to use sealants in cows and what sealant we use, because no one wants to be going out to see that dead cow. Okay, so what we did was a comparative study. So a little bit of a background. Teat Seal obviously is New Zealand's market leading teat sealant for good reason. It's a brilliant product. It's been around for a really long time. It's a global product as well. But it came off patent, as all good things do. They come to an end. So MSD was lucky to acquire the secret recipe as well, which isn't so secret. It's just bismuth subnitrate in an oily base, basically. So MSD has made ShutOut. So what we did was a non-inferiority trial, and the skeptics in the room will be like, boring, a non-inferiority trial, whoop-de-doo-da. But the trouble is, you kind of need to start with one type of study before you move to a superiority study. So we chose to do a non-inferiority study to show that ShutOut performed no worse than Teat Seal in a commercial dairy setting. So basically that was the overall objective of the study. So we looked at compared quarter level clinical mastitis right from dry off to 30 days in milk. We compared the presence or absence of Teat Seal at calving while at first milking, and that was done visually by the farmer. And there's a lot of robust discussion around how to establish the retention of Teat Seal. So we could have brought the cows in and ultrasounded them or x-rayed them, or so there are various methods. But what we wanted to do was to have a really good feel and idea of what the farmer was going to see, because at the end of the day, that's the feedback that you're going to get in the field, right? The farmer is going to want to see if the sealant is there, because in their mind, that is a measure of whether or not it's worked. And we also looked at the time to administer the product. This was a little bit more tricky. In hindsight, we probably could have done that a little bit better. And we also compared somatic cell counts of the herds at the first herd test post-calving. Okay, so just a couple of pictures to set the scene. There's our lovely Jo Holter, who has now flown off to Singapore. So at that point, she was our sort of product development lead, and there is Rico and Jo looking very studious. Everything was done, under AEC guidelines and strict protocol guidelines, and a lot of records were kept. On the left, we've got that sort of the setup that we had, so just typical commercial dairy shed. So this was done over one large farm in Canterbury, so North Canterbury, and it was one farm that runs two big sheds, and we ended up with 600 cows in each group. So around about 600 cows got ShutOut, and about 600 cows got Teat Seal, and they obviously were all low somatic cell count cows to qualify for sealant only, and they were just in buckets with hot water bottles like that, so not floating in a dirty, disgusting water bath. And then obviously they, the cows were marked and they got the required treatment. That was a lovely technical team at RVC. A great selfie of me too. It was freezing cold, okay? So, I know, it's a great photo, but around that time it was freezing cold. We also, I don't know if you remember very clearly, we had the floods in Canterbury. So around the time this was done over 4 different days, as cows were drafted off for dry off, because it was a commercial farm, and it poured and poured and poured with rain. So just to put a little bit of context around how challenging this dry off season was. So the farmers were blinded to what cow got what treatment. Obviously the technicians weren't. So the way the cows were dotted with blue or yellow, depending if they got ShutOut or Teat Seal, and then they had a Shoof leg band on. So when they came in for first milking post-calving, the leg band was supposed to be robust enough, and then the farmer or whoever was milking would strip the cows into a paddle and record whether or not it was blue or yellow, and whether or not Teat Sealant, well, not Teat Sealant, well, a sealant was present in each quarter. Once again, big team, hard at work. And then I had the joy of coming home every day and counting every tube by hand, so I could package them all up and send them back to Upper Hutt. I tried to get my kids involved, but it actually just made it harder, so that was my job. So the results. So we are really excited about these results because it's nice to have a second option. So like we talked about, clinical mastitis from dry off to the first 30 days in lactation. Now this was a non-inferiority study, and when you read through the literature, when you talk about mastitis studies, we often non-inferiority studies are performed, and they sometimes have a non-inferiority study of 10 to even 15%, which is a bit dodgy, really, when you think about it, because it's saying if the product in question, the investigation product, performs no worse than 15% worse, it's just as good. Well, that's not good enough, really. So when it came to looking at the clinical mastitis from dry after first 30 days in lactation, we actually went for a 2% non-inferiority margin, which was tough, okay? And what you can see is that ShutOut had a lower rate of clinical mastitis. So not only did we achieve non-inferiority, but it actually performed better. That wasn't statistically significantly better, but hand on heart, you can say that it performed really well. Retention of sealant, as reported by the farmer, that was a 5% non-inferiority margin. And once again, we had better retention at first milking, and that was at a statistically significant level. And the individual somatic cell count at first herd test post-calving, once again, ShutOut rocked in really well. So hand on heart, we're pretty happy with those results. And we're not wanting to go out and set the world on fire and tell everybody to stop using Teat Sealant to use ShutOut, because that would be ridiculous. But what it's doing is giving an option where you can now we can say to farmers, look, you've got choices, and the choices are backed by data. Okay, so clinical mastitis, ShutOut was non-inferior. Retention, ShutOut was superior. And somatic cell count, ShutOut was non-inferior to Teat Seal. Okay, and it was done under some really challenging conditions. Okay, so I think, and I know Canterbury is only one area of New Zealand, but it was a pretty cold, wet winter, and it was hideous over that dry off period, as Rico may touch on, but yeah, it certainly wasn't ideal. The cows weren't quite swimming, but it was pretty muddy. Also, just a little bit of context around where we've got with this study. We have written it up as a paper. It's in the process of being submitted for publication, but with all things at MSD, as you guys are all aware, nothing moves overly fast, and it's just going through a bit of an internal review process before we submit it, but the plan is to have it published. So that's the New Zealand study. So just, this is all in a detailer, which I was going to wave around, but there's some detailers at the front. You were talking to farmers, like why use Teat Seal, and why use ShutOut? So the syringe looks kind of similar to all of our other DCT products. It's got a dual tip syringe, and the other ergonomic benefit of this is that the tube's quite short. And the tube's quite short, so you've got a shorter plunger length because they removed the air pocket. So in theory, it should be easier to use. And just once again, why use it in heifers? Obviously, heifers are prone to developing mastitis around the time of calving. So this is just for all Teat Sealants. And it can, obviously, we know that a certain percentage of cows will not form a teat plug early into dry off. So by chasing an antibiotic dry cow therapy, or just cows that have nothing, putting a Teat Sealant in there can definitely minimise any potential infections getting into those open teat canals in the early dry off period. So because MSD is global and our products are generally global products, there have been some other market support studies done in other countries. This is a study that was done in the States, looking at, once again, it was a non-inferiority study, really similar to what we've just done in New Zealand. Orbiseal is Teat Seal, so often products have got different names overseas. So really similar, about 400 cows in each herd. They selected them, had to be low somatic cell count cows, and they got either Orbiseal or ShutOut, and it was another non-inferiority study, which performed just like ours did. And another study, so this was looking at a Teat Sealant alone being shut out, or a Teat Sealant with a short-acting antibiotic therapy. Teat Sealant alone in low somatic cell count cows, so cows with less than 200,000 cells, and if got just sealant and above 200,000 got the antibiotic and the sealant, and they compared how they performed. And once again, ShutOut performed really well in that study as well. So this is a product that is newer for MSD, and you're going to see a lot more work coming out of New Zealand and globally with this product. So it's an exciting time. So I'm going to welcome Rico up, who was our amazing study investigator. I don't know if he'll do it again or not.
We'll keep you on, Ben. What do I do here?
A big button clicks forward.
That one. Awesome. Good morning, everyone. So when we we really try to instill a culture of collaboration at our practice, and part of that is working closely with our key stakeholders, which in this case was one of our key supply members in MSD. So I would probably describe the process as character building. So where's the pointy? Right around there, 30th of May or just under, is where we typically dry our animals off. And as you can see, that's the flow rate per second of the Waimakariri River. And this farm is pretty much on the border of said river. So things did not particularly go well during one of the dry-off mobs, and obviously not cows, but this is sort of the situation some of our farmers throughout Canterbury and North Otago ended up right during this process. So overall it was just an awesome experience for the RVC team, working with people like Joe and Penny, Emma and Winston from EpiVets, who did all the niggly stats, which I'm not a fan of, and our RVC team and the farmers, as we said, through some pretty challenging conditions. And I'd like to introduce you to Will. So Will is the farm manager who helped us out with countless hours of putting leg bands on and sort of try and be really calm. And when it doesn't happen to you, it's hilarious, right? So that picture Joe showed you earlier of Joe and I studiously looking at animals, that was right before Will got literally shat on. And of course I just proceeded to roar with laughter and said, "Hey Will, smile for the camera." And as you can see, his hand's about to flip the bird at me. So he wasn't particularly pleased with me that day. I think the real key feature from ShutOut that our technician team found was the usability. So our technician team is called Team Titty. So this is feedback courtesy of them. So in regards to the tube design, they really did notice, because these techs are putting in literally tens of thousands of tube a season, and just any sort of ergonomic gain that can be made makes a massive difference for them. So really not having that air bubble and that bit of extra push that they need for every tube certainly made the job easier for them. And they were also particularly a fan of the dual tip design, which just sort of lowers that risk of the partial insertion. And as you saw with Penny, she needed to rug up a fair bit during the process. It was quite noticeable for the tech team that it just wasn't prone to going hard, and there was certainly less warming required. So I've sort of been asked to comment on ShutOut's place in the ITS market, and I would sort of just ask you what's important to your practice. So for example, for us, it's we take into account things like the science behind the product, product features like usability or points of differences, supplier relationships, product support, pricing, etc., etc. And I think with ShutOut, you've got a combination of solid local and international research and some usability and points of differences. So there could be a nice little niche for this product in our market. MSD do support us in a lot of things. So on the left here is Captain Kirk with our calf rearing awards that we do every year. And Penny was kind enough to help us out with our calf rearing seminars, and she had some nice ideas about how to explain to people going through hula hoops how the gut shrinks as birth goes on to get that colostrum into them. So thanks so much. And yeah, we do awards. So I'll show you my first award that I got, which is the Volcano Award. So as I am at this stage, I'm a remarkably calm and composed person, but it sort of boils up when that heifer doesn't want to get in the trailer, and then I sort of explode and get into it and try and help the farmer get her in as studiously as we can. So with that, I would like to thank you for putting up with me, and you're going to have to put up with me again just before lunch, unfortunately. But do you have any questions for Penny? Not for me.